Hello and welcome to another video about the Alpha 24 for MEIOU and Taxes in EU4. And we are looking at the changes hidden, or rather done, in the economy in the background, which can be seen by your modifiers, but also will change your behavior, how you deal with things. In the main overview video, I already mentioned that the consumption values here have been changed, and therefore you now see hundreds and thousands of consumptions or fulfillment ratios, which are quite different to before. But most importantly, there are other things which are connected to that. I already mentioned that we have done some rebalances of food, salt, and so on, which is partially back with the food price and how everything is working here in regards to subsistence and so on. I don't want to dive too deep into this, but it's just keep an eye on your food and just see if you need to expand in your food production. Also, a small shout out to the Italian ideas here, which are one of the few idea sets which in fact reduce your rural production for example, food and increase for exotics and delicacies. Therefore, representing the more commercial, more capitalistic approach of the urban cities in North Italy already at the game start. And now diving into here, there are two things which have been changed. One, as said, the fulfillments, and this other one is basically how investment itself works. As everybody knows, because it's getting triggered at the beginning of the game, you will have in your utility decisions, but getting popped up at the beginning of the mod is the investment manager here, which, for example, triggers investments if you keep it running every 3, 5, 6 years, whatever you set up here. And then it takes money from your treasury and invests into your provinces. This investment has been changed. It still works here with the auto investor, and you should keep it running if you are not that keen on micromanaging everything in your economy. But the investment here works now in a way that it considers, for example, how corrupted your province is. Therefore, checking out the corruption values here of your elites, but also especially of the province itself. For example, here in provincial administration is extremely critical, because that's of course depending on the estate corruption here, because that has an impact on the provincial administration, but it also has an impact from your state corruption, basically how well you are bureaucratically or how your administration is reformed, basically. So all these things do matter. What also matters here is the state reach itself. For example, investments from the auto investor will not happen in provinces with below 2.5 state reach. Very important change. And you in fact need state reach so that your own investments, which you can do with your auto investor, for example, buildings here, are possible. So you can still do it here, but they will not work if you don't have state reach. Therefore, setting up a map mode, for example, state reach might be important, but also the auto investor will not target these provinces. Now, why is it no longer efficient, or why shouldn't you do this? Because you need state reach to actually do something as a state, and if you don't, the estates will eat up your cash as corruption and put it in their own pockets. Therefore, you will enrich the estates that way to a certain degree, or it will just pile up in here in your property, depending on how your estate structure is in these provinces. There's another value here which is important to consider. It's basically the investment that happens, and if it gets corrupted by your estates, which will naturally happen because nobody has zero corruption here on this province or his provinces, they will use by the estates to pay the upkeep costs or the maintenance costs of your property here. For example, if we check it out, there's somewhere, no, that's the infrastructure spending. Somewhere there are the costs, how much your property costs in upkeep, and your estates, most of the time, because they are owning the property here. So for example, the nobles own 42% of the resources and 46%, for example, of farmland. And they, of course, have to pay upkeep costs on these properties, on these farmlands. And if you invest into it and it gets corrupted, these estates will use it to pay these maintenance costs and not directly to expand it. Of course, what happens or will happen is that therefore your nobles will be more profitable in this province and therefore might invest more into expanding your farmlands. But of course, that's not your state ownership. That's the nobles' ownership, of course. Therefore, investing into it will not only, or not always, especially not in the early game, increase your state share and will not help you expanding your own stuff unless you have some state reach, basically. And therefore the investment game has been rebalanced and been more complex in the background, but it's more natural on the front side. So what you will see here is when you play along is that the investment, first of all, feels more natural. So if you work, for example, dump 100 ducats by accident here into Ostmark, you will not crush your rural economy here, which, for example, has happened in the past. Because you cannot invest that much money into your provinces anymore, most of it will get corrupted due to the corruption here. It will go into the pockets of the nobles and the church, therefore making them more efficient. And some stuff will pile up here in the investment pool, which of course right now is, if you were to do this, for example, here, and let's just leave the game running here until next year, it will get invested depending on your state reach again. So you need state reach to do investment, and you need higher state reach to invest it more efficiently, else your investment pool will only decay very slowly or get invested very slowly. Therefore, you cannot by accident shoot up farmlands massively, therefore crush your wages, therefore crush your economy and suddenly sit at a massive loss, which sometimes happened if you were not careful and did some weird investments. This, of course, encourages you to work with state reach. This encourages you to work and keep an eye on your corruption, basically. And that helps in total to, well, let's say it balances out the investments more naturally. It also helps the AI estates to invest more naturally. And also all these kind of natural features which are here also have an impact on how the AI or how your estates want to invest. For example, if you have a natural harbor here, like Venice, for example, the AI will also take that into consideration and invest more focused based on the natural features you got there. And from there, you also have, of course, less problems in provinces with, for example, tribes where you barely have any state reach, where you, for example, if you conquer here. Interesting. For example, here, if you conquer Horde territory, you really had problems because you had all these nomads here, and therefore investments were quite hard to do because you were always crushing the local economy completely, or you were increasing the nomadic shares by accident, which you didn't want to do, basically. So, in total, this leads to... yeah, you have to be more careful, but you also can be more focused. It's a two sides to the same blade, basically. And also, in regards to your investment here, which is this macro builder here, the taxation buildings, or when you look into a province here, these kind of things have disappeared from the macro builder because they were not used that often from there, because you normally did automatic taxation, and only in rare cases you would use local tax laws, for example, if you want to do something specific. And of course, feel free to play around with the economic changes, give us feedback, and see how your prices, how your economy and everything will develop from all these new things. Also, the elites, like nobles, okay, give me a second until I can click on a province again. So, also your elites here have been rebalanced a little bit in their comfort, luxury consumption, or in the better goods consumption, to avoid some edge cases in their wealth, for example, because sometimes you had situations where they were only consuming one good, for example. They still had a high fulfillment, but basically they were lacking one of their life goods because they couldn't get it on the market. So the consumption is a little bit rebalanced here and really tries to get you the stuff they need, and then they expand on that in regards to their desires, basically. Now, we have been reaching the March, so it's now a year ago, and as you can see here, we invested 50 ducats here. Only 10 got invested itself here, and the increases are not massively, but also our industry here is only dropped by some percent, not massively, so that will help you and make it more stable in regards to your investment. We also see here now one of the events which are new from the Dea Gratia, which are, for example, clergy events here. Okay, and also you will see some changes, or rather, if you play, for example, Austria, one of the main locations for salt is, for example, Salzburg here. The salt trade has been balanced a bit more, so you have more production in areas where you didn't have much salt, and the major producers got a little bit nerfed. So the salt trade is a little bit more stable now, but you can still make a lot of profit from it, for example, if you want to. And with the new economic changes, you can definitely exploit the local production of your stuff a lot more, and also trade it much better with the new nodes. Okay, there we see our investor here, and it will only invest into provinces where you have enough state reach. I think Austria has enough state reach everywhere, but if you play, for example, the Ottomans here, or into North Africa, or even worse, into Central Africa, you will have a lot of regions where you don't have state reach at all. Okay, I think that's the main changes here. I think that's basically it. The supply and demand of the trade nodes didn't really change, or of your population in general, but the biggest impact, as described, are the new nodes and how trade therefore flows. Combine that with the changes to the trade node system, which was done in the past, you are a lot more limited to what you can reach. And therefore, for example, if you want, as Austria, get access into the Adriatic, you really need a good trade city there to have from there reach into other nodes again. Unless you only want to buy from Adriatic, then you just need to open it up with a node and one trade center. So in general, feel free, leave a like, subscribe, and give us feedback on our new economy.